Many miraculous years with Guruji. I have been lucky to be associated with Guruji since November 1984. Since then, a spate of miracles have blessed my life, too many for all of them to be written here, as also touched the lives of many friends and acquaintances. I am recounting some of these satsangs here. I first met Guruji when my wife's left shoulder ligament was torn in a scooter incident. We came to know that a great saint was residing in Chandigarh, and even the doctors of prestigious PGI were referring terminal cancer cases to him. We went to him. Since then, our experiences span nearly 22 years of being at the Mahapurush's feet. We went to Guruji at 4 a.m. and he held my hand for a long time. It felt as if nectar was flowing through my body. Guruji then told me that I was wearing Ek Mukhi Rudraksha, one-mouth Rudraksha. He also said that there was a Shivlinga on it, which I stoutly denied. He asked me to show the Rudraksha, which I did. He held the Rudraksha and made a gesture to suggest that he was looking at it intently. And then he said, "Here it is." And sure enough, there was a Shivlinga embedded on it. It has been there ever since. Rudraksha cure for me. I had been suffering from amoeboisis, which is characterized by acute diarrhea, for 2 years. Guruji gave me Amrit, divine nectar, and asked me to go back to my residence. I could not go to the office that day as I went to the toilet for at least 24 times. In the evening, Guruji rang me up and asked about my health. I told him it was very bad. Guruji took a contrarian view. It was good, he said, that all the diseases are going out. The next morning I felt that I had been fully cured and informed Guruji. He told me that the disease has not been cured and will be cured the next day. He also asked me to come to him. When I reached his place, he touched his Rudraksha and a spoon on my belly. I felt an electric shock go through the spot and fell. He only smiled and said, "Now it has gone." The disease, electrocuted, has never returned since then. And my wife is healed too. The cure of my wife, Bubbly, he came to our house on Saturday evening. 3 chapatis made of black lentil, urad dal, were prepared under his instructions. One half of a roti was torn, and I was asked to flush it down the commode. He murmured something while placing the rest of the rotis on Bubbly's shoulders and then handed them over to me. He said these should be fed to a black dog. I was aghast. It was 9 p.m. and in the spick and span cantonment, stray dogs, that too black dog, would be tough to find. I voiced my doubts. Guruji quietly told me to go to the ground floor. I was astonished to find a black stray dog near the foot of the stairs. Bubbly was cured that very moment. One day Guruji had come to my house. While many guests were present, my wife had kept a bowl of almonds. Suddenly he took a handful of almonds and started distributing them, saying, "Take walnut, pistachio, cardamom." The almonds were miraculously transformed into the dry fruits that he called out. Removing a handicap. One of the Jawans with me, Nayak Anandan, was badly injured during an obstacle course and his vertebra was severely damaged. The soldier was treated but was to be boarded out of the army as he was permanently handicapped. I took him to Guruji at 4 in the morning. As I requested Guruji to cure him, Guruji replied, "Shall I cure him? Who is going to eat up his sins? He will be born handicapped in the next life." I was puzzled, but nevertheless requested him to burn the soldier's sins by the fire of his tapas, his spiritual energy. Guruji smiled and directed Anandan to lie down. He then touched him and assumed a ferocious stance, as if he was rebuking someone. On the ground, the soldier was whimpering, and I was getting baffled. After a while, he directed Anandan to get up and asked him to remove all the braces he was wearing. He told me, "It will not go in one day. Bring again on the third day. The next day, as I was going to PT in the morning, Anandan was doing bent stretches on the barrack veranda, as if showing me his strength. I immediately ordered him to stop, but he told me that there was no pain. He felt that his body was fully cured. I told him not to divulge the serious matters till Guruji saw him again on the appointed day. On the third day, we went to Guruji again, who called me near him and pointed to Anandan as an example of a person who had just delivered from the clutches of the planet Saturn. Anandan had become fair and youthful and must have lost about 13 to 14 kgs. I looked at Anandan and saw these changes had indeed come about. Guruji then asked Anandan what had happened after he touched him. Anandan replied that he had not slept since then. Guruji immediately took a teaspoon and touched it to his thymus gland. He then directed me to take him to the barracks and let him sleep without any interruption. I had hardly got out of Guruji's place when Anandan's head came to rest on my shoulder. With the help of the driver, we took him inside the vehicle. Anandan slept for 3 days at a stretch and was fully cured. During the routine medical checkup, the doctor was surprised and a board of medical officers declared him fit for all army duties. Feelers for a dead wife. Colonel D.R.P. Chaudhary, a widower, used to stay opposite our quarters in Chandigarh. One day Guruji went to his house and, pointing to a photo of a lady, asked him who she was. Colonel Chaudhary replied that she was his wife, long snatched away by fate, never to return. Guruji said, "She's here. Do you want to see?" We were puzzled. He then lifted his hand and shifted a little. Suddenly the photograph started shaking. The table on which the photograph was kept also started shaking. Then slowly it subsided. Guruji said, "Her son is here. You are here. Where can she go? She's here. No need to slap him." Guruji had come to my house for the evening and a lot of people had come for the Sangat. Colonel Chaudhary was trying to get my attention. We went to a room when he told me that he had told his teenage son, Tiltu, to come to my quarters and offer his pranam to the great saint. Tiltu, however, had replied that his age was for listening to music. Going to saints was for his father. Colonel Chaudhary could not control his anger and had slapped him. He then asked me to pacify his son. I told him that I would go in when the iron was cold. Both of us came back to the drawing room and sat close to Guruji as if nothing had happened. Guruji immediately looked at Colonel Chaudhary and said, "The son has grown up. What was the need to slap him?" At that very moment, Tiltu entered the room and bowed to Guruji. Mind reading games. Earlier, Guruji used to give a glass of Amrit to everybody. Only one glass was authorized per person, and I had my quota. Once I was sitting very close to Guruji, and suddenly I thought, if Guruji gives me another glass, I shall know for certain that he is reading my mind. Guruji was giving the glass of Amrit to someone else, but he stopped and gave it to me. After about 15 minutes, I dismissed it as a coincidence. If he now gives me the third glass, I shall be sure he is reading my mind. I thought to myself. He stopped, gestured towards me, and gave me the Amrit, saying, "Have this Amrit yourself." Earlier, no one could touch Guruji, hence the people used to pranam to him from a distance. Once I sat near him and was thinking that I was indeed lucky to have met him in my life, but I would be very lucky if I was allowed to touch his feet. He glanced at me for a second. Just then, the next afternoon he came to my house and desired to rest on my bed. I was delighted and took him to my bedroom. He then asked me if I had clarified butter, ghee in my house. I said yes, and he told me to massage his feet with it. By then, I had forgotten what I had prayed for the day before. After about half an hour, he asked me if he could leave now. It dawned on me that he had come only to fulfill my desire. 2020 vision at 42. When I was around 42 years of age, I found that my near vision was getting hazy. I went to Guruji and requested him to cure my eyesight. He told me that my eye was following nature's rule. I insisted that he improve my eyesight. He smiled, told me to lie down. He flashed a match near my eyes and then poured some water with a spoon after murmuring something. Instantly, I started seeing everything crystal clear. He then told me that his remedy would work for 2 years. Thereafter, nature would take its course. Later, I was posted to Guwahati. One day, my near vision seemed blurred. I referred to the diary where I had written down the date when Guruji had cured my eyes. Exactly 2 years ago. The speech my kin didn't give. When I was in Chandigarh, my brother-in-law, who was terrified of speaking in public, rang up from Ranchi and requested we approach Guruji to cancel his forthcoming lecture to army officers on electronic warfare. We took his photograph and went to Guruji at 4 in the morning. As soon as we entered Guruji's room, he smiled and said, "Did you get a letter or a trunk call from my brother-in-law? The coward, what does he want?" We narrated the problem. Guruji told us to sit down and continue to attend to other problems. Time was passing by, so we requested him to do something. He just motions us to wait. Suddenly at 2:05, he asked for the photo. He brushed his fingers over it and said, "I have transferred the problem. The lecture will now be given by a non-Hindu." We came back. In the evening, a trunk call from my brother-in-law confirmed that the lecture would now be given by a Muslim officer of the army. We asked him when the decision had been changed. It was 8:05 a.m. exactly, he said. Healing cold to uncommon maladies. An orderly had been assigned to me to replace the one who had gone on leave. The new orderly was having a sex change problem. Our Subedar Major was worried and I was worried. How would he now stay in the Jawan's barracks? Guruji had come to our house around this time and I requested him to cure this boy. Guruji asked, "Where do you get these patients from?" I replied, "Guruji, he's destined by fate to be cured and hence he has come to me." Guruji placed a spoon on his back and the Jawan was cured. Once I was running a fever and was basking in the sun on the roof. Guruji came to our house at about 3 in the afternoon and asked about my condition. I had a running nose, a headache, fever, and a foul taste in my mouth. He directed my wife to call a doctor. Colonel Chaudhary immediately came with a thermometer. He told Guruji that my temperature was 103 degrees Fahrenheit. Guruji anxiously asked the doctor how I could be cured. Colonel Chaudhary replied that with medicines, a cure would be effected in 48 hours, otherwise it may take 3 days. Guruji then asked my wife to get a spoon, some common salt and a little water. These were brought. Guruji took a little salt and water in the spoon, murmured something and asked me to raise my head. He poured the concoction down my nose. I felt as if everything inside was about to come out. I rushed to the toilet. A lot of fluid came out to the nose. I washed my face and came out within 30 seconds. Guruji then asked the doctor to take my temperature again. It was 97.5 degrees Fahrenheit. He asked me if I still had a running nose, headache or a foul taste in my mouth. Quickly healed, I gratefully replied to all in the negative. Touched with a rose. Once during the middle of January 1985, Guruji announced that on 25th January, on my wife's Bubbly's birthday, he would come to my house in the evening. Lots of people came to our house that day. Some ladies were giving their shawls to Guruji for making them fragrant. Guruji was wearing the shawls just once and saying, "The fragrance will remain for a week or for 15 days or for a day." As the case may be to different ladies. I had given him a military blanket and asked him how long the fragrance would remain. He smiled and said, "It will last for a year," and it was so. Enjoying Guruji's grace in Dehradun. I was in Dehradun and had no contact with Guruji for past 3 years. Suddenly one night I had excruciating pain in my ears. Both my eardrums burst. The next morning I went to an ENT specialist. He informed me that both my eardrums had been totally damaged. In fact, he gave the message in writing since I could not hear a thing. The doctor said the army doctors will do an eardrum transplant, but that 95% of these failed. Therefore, he added I should be mentally prepared for being boarded out of army. The same night, a sick gentleman came to my house. He said that Guruji had sent him from Jalandhar with a bottle of Amrit, as Guruji knew that I had become deaf. After I had taken the Amrit for 4 or 5 days, my eardrums reformed and I could hear fully. The doctors were baffled. While I was still in Dehradun, the government sanctioned in 1988 a loan for the purchase of a car. I was in dilemma about where should I buy the car from, Dehradun, Delhi or Kolkata. A trunk call came from Colonel Chaudhary, now Brigadier Chaudhary, posted at Delhi. He said that Guruji had entered his office like a storm and said, Chatterjee is now at Dehradun and is worried about the purchase of his car. Tell him that the car is waiting at Chandigarh. He went out immediately. Brigadier Chaudhary ran behind him. There was a long corridor, but Guruji could not be seen. Thinking that Guruji must have come to Delhi, Brigadier Chaudhary ran up the Jalandhar residence where Guruji used to stay. Brigadier Chaudhary asked where Guruji was in Delhi so that he could go and have his darshan. The man answering the call said that Guruji had never gone anywhere and was sitting and smiling right in front of him. I bought the car from Chandigarh. It ran perfectly till I sold it in 2006. After 13 years, I come to Guruji. I had retired and was in Ahmedabad in 1988. I had no contact with Guruji for about 13 years. During June of 1998, I found it increasingly difficult to sleep. My wife advised me to locate Guruji and to go to him. After making many inquiries, I found that Guruji had moved from Chandigarh to Jalandhar, from Jalandhar to Panchkula, and from Panchkula to Delhi. I got his address. My neighbor, Mr. Kirit Bhai, was also keen to meet Guruji, and along with him we reserved berths in Rajasthani for 10 July to reach Delhi on 11 July. I rang up Guruji's place in Delhi on 9 July to say that I was coming to Delhi. Someone picked up the phone and inquired if I was Colonel Chatterjee speaking from Ahmedabad. He also said that since today was Guru Purnima, Guruji was in part but had predicted that Colonel Chatterjee would ring up at 7 p.m. from Ahmedabad. Through this person, Guruji indicated that he was aware I was coming and wanted me to come at 6 p.m. on 11 July. Kirat Bhai was obviously puzzled. We reached Delhi and I bought a thick book on history, knowing that I would not be able to sleep at night. Thinking that Guruji was my own, I decided to go and meet him at 3 p.m. We reached Sultanpur at about 4 p.m. and a strange thing happened. We were not able to locate Empire State. After some time, I understood the problem. Guruji had asked us to come at 6 p.m. while we were there at 4 p.m. I then told Kirat Bhai that I had understood the problem and now would use a strong remedy. I got down from the car and prayed to Guruji, saying, "Enough is enough. Please call us now." Immediately a boy came running and told us, "For a long time your car is neither going here nor there. Where do you want to go?" He then showed us the entrance gate to the Empire State just beside the main road. It can hardly be missed. As we reached E-Villa, Guruji embraced me and said, "After many years, you have come to me. You have not slept for 21 days. Tonight you will sleep. Have langar here." We went back to the hotel after langar and I started reading the history tome. Soon I felt that someone was burning incense in the next room. A wonderful fragrance wafted into our room and I fell asleep immediately. Next day I again came to Guruji, and while massaging his feet I told him, "Guruji, earlier there used to be a fragrance all over near you. Now it is mild." He immediately replied, "Why? Did you not smell it at the hotel yesterday when I came to make you sleep? My insomnia has been cured." During the same time, November of 1999, when I had come from Ahmedabad to meet Guruji in Delhi, he told me, "You will come to me. I had an interview at Siemens and I came a day before to Delhi." When I told him about the interview, he told me that I had already been selected and gave me particulars of the salary I would get. Of course, I got the same amount. the Langar and Prasad cures. For a few months in 2006, my right ring finger was not bending and there was immense pain. The doctors told me the sleeve of the ligament had dried up and was incurable. They advised me to take painkillers. I narrated the problem to Guruji and he ordered me to remove all the rings with precious stones I wore on my hands. The next day my finger was cured, but then the left ring finger started paining. After a few days I told Guruji of the problem and he told me to dip the finger in hot water. Thinking that he may not heal me at that time, I requested him to cure me. He then told me to have langar. After having 3 langars, I was cured. Sometime in 2000, I found in the morning that my left hand had no sensation. I could not move it. It was paralyzed. The same evening, I went to Sangat, and when Guruji was distributing prasad, I told him about the problem. A little forcefully, he told me to take the prasad and have it outside. As soon as I ate the prasad, I felt a tingling sensation in my paralyzed hand. He again gave me prasad and I ate it. Now I could move my fingers and the hand. He gave me prasad for the 3rd time and mobility was restored to my hand within 15 minutes. Cure for baldness. My wife was getting bald from the front. For 3 years, all her efforts to stem baldness, aloe vera shampoos, arnica plus Shehnaz Hussain had been in vain. When I came to Delhi, I told Guruji about the problem. He immediately said, "Bubbly auntie," waved a hand and I said, "Hat gaya. It will take some time." Within a week, fresh hair had covered the affected area and she was soon cured. In 2003, I started to have urinary problems. Finally, the doctors advised a prostate gland operation. I was attending Guruji's Sangat and mentally told him, "Please cure me." He immediately raised his right hand above his head and did some mudra, the thumb rubbing the index finger. I felt he had done something for me but was confused. I then prayed, "If this is for me, then Guruji, please look at me." He did so and I was convinced. Next day on, I was cured, bringing rains for me in Kolkata. During the end of April 2007, I had to go to Kolkata. After Langar, I wanted to take permission from Guruji and request him to keep Kolkata air-conditioned during my stay. But he angrily told me, "Leave your job and come to me." I could not say anything. Later, he told Gayatri that he had sent rains for me in Kolkata for Chatterjee. I boarded the Rajasthani on Friday evening and rang up my relative in Kolkata. He told me it was raining cats and dogs. Throughout my 9-day stay there, it was either cloudy or drizzling. When I returned to Delhi, Guruji smiled at me and said, "Was it raining in Kolkata?" I told him, "आपने मेरे को इतना जोर से डांट दिया कि मैं आपको बोल नहीं पाया था, लेकिन आपने दया करके मन की बात सुन ली. You were so angry with me that I could not ask you. However, you took pity on me and knew what was in my heart." He said, "Ja, Ashkar." Divine gifts. Once in Chandigarh, Guruji, upon meeting a lady closely related to a chief minister, raised his and manifested a ear top and gave it to her. But the lady complained, "What am I going to do with one ear top?" Guruji again raised his hand and manifesting a second gold ear top. The lady continued to complain, "Guruji, the designs are not the same." Guruji then said, "I cannot do anything. Shivji has given whatever he has given." Once after Langar, when the Sangat had thinned out at Empire State, we sat down around Guruji. He asked Mr. Harminder Singh, director of Siemens, "Have you heard the experiences of Chatterjee?" He replied in the negative and I was asked to narrate my experiences. After a while, Guruji became stiff and red in color. Suddenly, he raised his hand and a damru-like thing came into his hand from nowhere. He immediately gave it to Menaka Gandhi and became still like a statue in the Namaskar Mudra. After a while, he said, "Let's see what Shivji has given." He broke open the damru-like thing and a khoya type of prasad was found. He distributed it to everyone and yet there was some left. He gave it to Menaka and said, "Do not keep it in the fridge. It will never spoil." Satsang of Lieutenant Colonel retired T.S. Chatterjee, executive with Siemens.